Alright guys, we're back for another video on media literacy and reading media critically. So we've already laid the foundation with the previous video. Now we're going to approach more specifically issues concerning ideology and reading the content and the features of an ad or a media text, and how do we do that? And so we've already discussed there are many forms of media text, and we want to understand the overt and implicit messages. Okay, so overt is the intended message. Okay, intended by who? Right? Well, by the advertiser. Okay, so it's what they wanted to say. Implicit means unintended. We're going to get into each of these in more detail later in these slides. But we just want to define our terms. Okay, so overt. If something is overt, it's very obvious. If something's implicit, it's somewhat hidden or secondary. It's implied. That means you have to kind of reason through to get that meaning. So it's unintended. It's not intended. So this is the meaning formulated by the audience. And we want to think about what's their purpose. Okay, purpose of the advertising. Okay, this is very important. It's more than just profit. Okay, it's more than profit. And we'll come to that. What is the more? And then finally, the ideology, the belief system structure. Or perhaps it's not a clear system, but there's a bunch of beliefs and ideas and values that come together in it. So the media task, we'll look at a media text by carefully identifying the use of codes and conventions. Okay, what are codes and conventions? These are the visual techniques and the aesthetic style and expectations that we discussed last time. So obviously if it's a music video, we're going to expect different things than a radio commercial. Okay? Then we want to think about, well, what's the ideological message that they're trying to send? What do they want us to think and to believe? What do they think and believe, and what do they want us to think and believe? And so these codes and conventions, they can include all these techniques like images, colors, font, style, layout, symbols, and so on. If it's video format, sound, lighting. Alright. So let's define ideology a little bit more here. So notice it's a system. Okay, so if something's a system, it's somewhat organized. Okay, for it to be an ideology, normally it's an organized set of ideas. So you might think, capitalism, if you want to think politics. Maybe you're in China, communism. Maybe you're, I don't know, in Canada we're moving towards socialism. Perhaps it's democracy. Those are all ideologies, okay? These happen to be political ideologies. Okay, but there are systems with ideas, values, and beliefs about this whole realm of politics. Right? They believe maybe democracy is good. Well, remember, these can come in many different spheres. They can be religious ideologies. You might have cultural and traditional values. And so on and so forth. Okay. The thesis, the main idea of a print ad, the argument being made is linked with these values and beliefs. Okay, so those are connected. So whatever they want us to believe and what they want to prove or persuade us about, okay, that's going to be automatically connected to the ideology of the advertisers. So some main categories that we get, where we get ideological representations, that is views or perspectives with value judgments, right? Because a worldview automatically assumes an argument and a position. It has a position automatically. So these are common topics, okay? So it could be masculinity, femininity, maybe it's gender, maybe it's sexuality, sexual orientation, race, could be national identity. This would be ethnicity versus national identity. Maybe it's more, patriotic. Could be just the individual's identity. Maybe the main thing is individualism. Maybe people don't care what country they're from or whatever. Could be wealth. That's class. Maybe power. We could put age up here. We could put things like ability in there. Alright, so these are common topics where ideology is represented. Then the codes and conventions, these are the stylistic devices, okay? So we can think of this as how the ideology is communicated. Okay, we can think of ideology as, this is what is being communicated, right? Like some kind of value, some kind of idea. This is how, right? What's the style of how they do it, okay? So if we're in a print ad, these codes and conventions are all of the technical ways of communicating, of presenting info, either visually or in text? Or both? So what are some of the things that are included in the codes and conventions? So you got to think about, the color. Sometimes green is envy or greed, at least in Western culture. So maybe they would choose that color to convey this idea. This would be the code, and this would be the idea conveyed by it, right? So I don't know, I guess if we had a person and, they were all dressed in green, and their eyes were these like crazy green eyes, and their mouth, and then they wanted a lot of money, and they're trying to grab that money, whatever, right? That would convey this idea of greed, plus the green adds to that idea. The layout on the page, right? So the overall composition, right? So I don't know if the sun is really big, and then it's like breakfast, blah blah blah, saying eat your breakfast early in the morning or whatever, right? So layout has to do with the composition of the page. Camera angle and lighting, right? These are in film-based media. How do they depict people, right? Could be their age, their race, are they attractive, etc. Think about text. Sometimes under a photo, they might have a picture of don't really know what I'm drawing there, but then they might have some text written down below the photo. That's a tagline or a caption. Think about titles. What do they put at the top as a title? What's the font? What's the size? What's the color of the font? Is it bold? Is it italics? There are constructed images, so images that are put together with other images. So putting two things together, I don't know, maybe this is the pig from Three Little Pigs or something. Are there symbols like logos? And then what images are juxtaposed? That means contrasted and put beside each other. Okay, so we'll look at a Michelin ad maybe later, and there's a big fat baby sitting down, and he's right beside a tire for a car, and it has to do with safety, right? So they put a tire, they juxtaposed a tire beside a new chunky baby, and that gives us the idea of safety. Trust these tires for your family. Okay, we got to think about the layout, so the composition of the ad and or anchorage as methods of development. We'll get into what anchorage is more later, but you can think about an anchor, right, for the meaning and interpretation. And an anchor is something you drop down from a boat to hold it in place, right? So sometimes they look like this. Well, sort of, I guess. Not quite a good anchor, but, and then, you would drop the anchor down the water and it would hold the boat in place. Okay. All right, it would be connected to the boat. All right, we'll come back for some more in the next video.